everyone. Welcome to The Witching Hours Nigh, my podcast, which hosts conversations about witchcraft, paganism, the occult, and other related topics in popular culture and in media. Once again, my guest is the wonderful Kate Laity, who is an author, a scholar, a musician, a very, very talented and dynamic person, and also a practicing witch, if I may say that. Kate and I had a great conversation from the first episode of this podcast about older women and the kinds of roles that we see in media. But of course, it was just a tip of the iceberg sort of conversation because there's certainly much more to be talked about. Fortunately, we recently went to a screening of a new film that also touches upon this and many other topics. So I invited Kate to come and talk about it on the podcast. So what was it we went and saw?
The Substance.
Dun, dun, dun.
In a wonderfully empty theater at the Spectrum.
It was wonderfully empty. I love that.
So we could make comments.
It was good because, well, not only
disturbing.
were we talking, and which we would, of course, not do if there were other people nearby, but we were making a lot of noise of revulsion and shock and disgust. And, ew, and oh my God.
Looking through my fingers.
And I reverted to my lapsed Catholicism, I suppose, because I must have said Jesus Christ about 100 times. Because that's what happens when you revert to this like place of primal, reaction, I suppose.
We're both very well versed in horror, so it's not like this is something new to us, but it was really effective.
I saw things and I've seen some body horror, and I don't mind body horror, but I saw some things I've never seen, and I saw some things done in ways I've never seen done that, as you say, were extremely effective. I'd heard a lot of responses to this film, but I didn't know anything much about it. I knew it had to do with a woman that wanted to be younger, basically.
And that it was body horror.
Yeah, and that it was extreme body horror. So, spoilers ahead. So lots and lots of them, because that's kind of how we're going to be able to talk about this. So, but if you've seen it, the basic premise is that there's a formerly very successful actress who still hosts a sort of aerobics, like a Jane Fonda style aerobics
totally
TV
Jane
show.
Fonda.
Yeah, it totally looks like Jane Fonda. She's celebrating, I believe it's her 50th birthday. And she's going to lose her job because her producer, who she overhears in the men's room because the women's room is closed for repair or something. So she overhears him saying she's out the door. This producer, of course, is played amazingly by Randy's horrible. Oh my God, I didn't say that name. Dennis Quaid, who's a slightly better human being, who's just fantastic in this role. He
eats it up.
He really does. He's just chewing the scenery and spinning it out and chewing it again.
And the only sad thing is I looked it up because I had to see why Ray Liotta was in the credit. He was originally going to play that role.
Oh, gosh. I didn't know that.
Imagine how wonderful that would have been.
I think there would have been something even more menacing about Ray Liotta in that part. I think oh my God, why do I keep doing that? Dennis Quaid, he certainly did the smarmy thing. He was certainly repulsive and evil and all that, but the menacing quality that I think Ray Liotta might have brought. And also I think there's something a little bit sexier about Ray Liotta, even and as an older guy.
You could see why he got that role
Absolutely,
in the first place.
Yeah. Whereas Dennis Quaid, the creepiness was there, but it was slightly more of a cartoonish, I think, portrayal, and that's not to knock on his performance because it's very impressive.
I thought it was excellent, and especially you see sort of at the end when he's there with the shareholders that there's really a great deal of that sort of the smarminess in service of here I am making gestures you can't hear.
She was doing a bowing
down to the shareholders and deferring to them, and certainly he really conveyed that well. And you can almost glimpse the arc of his career where he may have started out as an actor and now has become this person who's obnoxious,
of course,
in charge of this tiny little world and makes the most of it. But he's still beholden to people who hold the money purse strings. You sort of like in miniature, you get a sense of that whole career, which again, I think is speaking to it being a very good performance. But Demi Moore.
Well, I just want to talk for a second about what you just said, because I do want to talk about Demi, but this whole, towards the end where we do see those older shareholders, and this is a little further along in the narrative, they take on a sort of childlike glee and their movements and their facial expressions. So it kind of speaks to the idea that although there are not very many men portrayed in this story, the fact that they too are, kind of caught up in this maelstrom of this eternal youth mythology that Hollywood promulgates, and that these guys, because they are so wealthy and powerful, they're not as worried about their looks making them appear to be still part of this youthful game, because they are able to somehow
buy it.
Right. They're able to buy that. They're able to buy young women. They're able to, or their company, and they're able to buy all the things that help them feel vital, youthful. There's so much obviously to talk about, but I'd like to start at the very beginning, a very good place to start, which is that the very beginning of this film I found very powerful, and it is the construction of Elizabeth Sparkle, which is her name, Elizabeth Sparkle's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And they show them actually making the star, creating it, setting the letters in brass, and it's really cool. And then they do this sort of time progression thing where they show time passing and people first coming to visit it and take pictures and talk about her. And then as the years pass, people just walk over it. And then there's this scene where someone spills their fast food lunch on it. Ketchup everywhere.
So and it's presaging all the blood.
And the person tries to wipe up the ketchup, which is, I think, not even realistic, as who would actually try to do that. But perhaps out of respect, they do. It is exactly...
Watching.
Or someone's watching, yeah. And it is presaging all the blood that this film contains. And I don't think, even if someone tells you it's the grossest, bloodiest body horror ever made, I don't think it quite prepares you for the experience, because there's something so intentional and artful and detailed about every special effect and
the sound design.
Yes, I knew
oh my God,
you were going to say
sound
that.
Design.
Kate first pointed out to me when we were there, like, the sound design is amazing.
It's like turned up to 11. So everything. I mean, the first most terrible thing in it is Dennis Quaid eating with his mouth open, and it's just like, oh my God, I wanted to just squirm in my seat, because it's like, if I'm gonna have nightmares from this movie, it's gonna be that. It's gonna be Dennis Quaid. Oh
Dennis
my God,
Quaid chewing on what are they, little like crawfish or like steamed crawfish, and he's spitting out the carapaces, or the langoustines.
No, I think
they're crayfish, and they're boiled, and he's dipping them in this aioli sauce or something. So there's close-ups of his disgusting mouth and him eating, and the sound of it.
People just love that. I mean, that's just the way it is. For you or me, people are just people, and I have to give people what they want. That's what keeps the shareholders happy. And people always ask for something new. Renewal, it's inevitable. At 50, well, it stops.
What stops?
What?
What stops?
Oh, George! Oh! I'm sorry, I gotta run. Harvey! Gosh, those ratings are insane!
And meanwhile, you have Demi Moore sitting across from him. And of course, she's not eating or drinking anything because, she's a Hollywood actress who's aging and obviously can't eat or drink anything. So she's questioning him about his decision to, kick her off the show.
Since she's already overheard him saying.
Right, she heard it. And he starts a sentence and he says, well, at 50, it's just done. And she asks him to clarify. And he never really tells her what it is that is done at that point.
And it's clearly a reference to menopause.
Ah, right. Oh, I hadn't picked up. Very good. I hadn't picked up on that. He said it stops.
It stops.
Mm-hmm. This, of course, is a theme that we talked about a little bit in the other episode where we were talking about older women and portrayals. But this idea that women no longer being sexually viable because they no longer have reproductive function, and how that is connected to sex. The idea that women are not only no longer fuckable or sexually attractive to men or to other people, but this idea that they aren't even any longer sexual beings once menopause comes along, which is, of course, ridiculous and untrue and scientifically inaccurate. You have Demi Moore, who looks, it must be said, absolutely amazing for her age. Her body's amazing. Her face is amazing. She has long, lustrous, shiny hair. You look at her in the leotard and the tights for this aerobics show that she inexplicably still hosts. And just because it's kind of weird and silly that she's doing it, why wouldn't she do something else with her life as an actress? But
lack of imagination is pretty strong. Her
yeah,
character
exactly.
just is like, this is a thing I can do. I want to keep doing it. And it's
right.
It's
like that's how you're defined forever.
You grasp onto it and don't let go.
I think that theme is a little subtle for a lot of moviegoers to grasp, because the thing that struck me was that she went, we haven't gotten to it yet, but when the big thing happens and when the world kind of opens up for her again, because she's youthful again, because of things we're going to mention in a second. The substance. She chooses to continue to do the same thing, which is to do this goofy aerobic style dance television show. Why would you, if you could have, if you're incredibly beautiful and youthful and have money and opportunity and the world falling at your feet, why would you keep choosing to do the same thing? Yeah. So this, what you just said, the idea that she is stuck in this mode where she just wants to keep perpetuating the same thing, when the idea that women can choose to redefine themselves and their talents and their attributes and their beauty and their physicality and their sexuality. But the fact that she is caught in this narrow tunnel because
it's very Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's keep doing a sequel. Let's keep doing a reboot. Let's keep doing the same thing over and over because we're sure that was successful.
Right.
I think that's a critique not just of sort of how the industry treats women, but also this idea that nothing new. Don't do anything new. New is too scary and too difficult. Do the same thing, but do it better.
That is a great point. And not go too much off topic right now, but have you heard this recent news about how there's studios that are now going to start asking fans about how they should treat forthcoming sequels in whatever the Marvel and the whatever universe?
Because they're only going to talk to the white male fans.
Of course they are.
Who are going to say, no women, no people of color.
And they're supposedly afraid. They're afraid enough of this so-called toxic fandom that they're afraid of reactions if they do other things. And very good point. You just said the thing that's on everyone's mind, which is that the biggest thing they complain about is when we'd see diversity of casting or diversity of storylines. And it's absolutely horrifying. Also, the fact that you would listen to these fans instead of the artists who created the work are the artists that are finding new ways to interpret and present the work.
It's the customer service model.
Oh my God.
And it's not art. It's the same reason that they're investing heavily in the doomed project of generative AI, because they don't trust art, they want product.
Well, fuck that. I'm so disgusted with the whole AI thing too. You know what? Let's get back to the substance and talk about how we get to where we get and some of the things that go on.
And I want to say a little bit about the whole framing of the aerobics show too, and how that does tie into Jane Fonda, I'm quite sure, deliberately tying into not only the very look of the Jane Fonda workout from the 80s, which was omnipresent. I mean, we're old enough to remember it was omnipresent. Absolutely. Everywhere. And the betrayal that people felt when it came out that Jane Fonda actually had some plastic surgery done. That it wasn't just the aerobics that kept her looking youthful. Mm-hmm. For a long time, that really just poisoned people because she had reinvented herself. Mm-hmm. The whole Ted Turner thing, when she went from activist to wife of a media mogul, and that was sort of like... Some people were like going, that's it, she's sold out. Other people are like, okay, now she's safe. Now she can do the aerobics. Right. And everybody will buy the videotapes. Ugh. And then it was like, well, she's had some plastic surgery. They're like, cheated us. She cheated us.
But Jane Fonda, who's a beautiful woman still, I mean, she can't get a break. She can't do anything right.
For every woman. I mean, Jane Fonda is a great example of that. No matter what you do, it will not be the right thing.
You can't win. I have to say, I don't watch it very regularly, but this Grace and Frankie, the show terrific. She does with Lily Tomlin, it is fantastic. I did see an episode. Oh my gosh, it blew me away. She's dating Peter Gallagher, who I think is actually in real life quite a bit younger than Jane Fonda, but whatever. They have a moment where there's this talk about maybe they're going to commit to each other a little bit, and it is stunning. She pulls off her false eyelashes, her wig. Yes. she smears off her lipstick and she shows him what she looks like because this is a woman in her 80s, right?
Yeah.
You're close to. And I'm not sure if that's the age she's portrayed in the show, but that's how old she is. And she takes it all off. She says, this is who I am. Is this what you want? And he accepts her and still loves her and finds her beautiful and attractive. And it's such a great moment because, of course, in capitulating to the expectations for what television should look like, older women, if they're not putting on this glamorous thing, then you have women in their 50s being the Golden Girls. You know what I mean? And they're supposed to be elderly when they're actually younger. And here we have these women in their late 70s and early 80s who have to glam it up a bit just to be acceptable. So I just thought that was a great scene. I agree with you completely that Jane Fonda can't win, but also this idea that this actress who's done a lot of different kinds of things and has had a real life and has gotten a lot of pushback for it. And yet this portrayal of Elizabeth Sparkle, who can't seem to figure out what else to do with her life but this. This touches upon a theme that you've brought up a couple of times, which is the reason this could happen, were that technology out there, is because this woman has no life. She has no friends.
Yeah, I think that is one of the important things. This movie could not happen if she had any friends, especially women friends, who would say, oh, no, don't do this. Don't do this. Mm-hmm. But she's so isolated, and the LA apartment looking out on the city like you own it, and yet it owns you. Right. She has nothing. She has a big picture of herself and sort of the height of her.
She doesn't
young,
even have a cat.
Aerobic beauty. Yeah, not even a cat. If she had a cat, I think even the cat would probably stop. Go, no. Don't do this. Don't do this. Hanging on to her, going, no, don't go. But it's this isolation. Her whole life is her career. And
her looks, which is what made her career.
Yeah. The one moment of connection in the whole film is beautiful and poignant and sad. But I think we should talk about that later.
Yeah.
Because we should get through some of the grossness that makes that moment so much more effective.
It's essentially what occurs is, can I just say, in lead up to this, there was a lot of traumatizing shit in this movie. It was hard to watch, hard to hear. I was definitely covering my eyes and squirming in my seat. And I'm a grown woman and I'm a horror buff and I couldn't handle it sometimes. But the most horrifying scene for me, can I just say, with all the needles and the blood and was the car crash.
Oh yeah.
That was terrifying.
Oh my God, that was awful. I forgot about that.
Elizabeth Sparkle is out, and this is the only time she's seen driving a car, because after that she only walks, which is interesting because it's LA.
That was the one unbelievable part of the film.
So she's driving home from a meeting with Dennis Quaid.
Yes, that's right.
And she sees the replacement of one of her billboards with an audition ad saying, who will be the next Elizabeth Sparkle? So they're already looking for her replacement. And she stares at it for 2 seconds too long. She gets in this diabolically evil, horrible crash that goes on and on. You really feel like you're there. And you think, well, this is where the movie's going now. She's crippled or whatever. She dies or this, because there's no way someone would survive this. So the next shot is, of course, her. She's in a hospital exam room, and she has miraculously not suffered any injuries. I guess she had some really good airbags. She had a bruise or two. The doctor is celebrating the fact that she is fine. He also says something like, my mom used to watch your show on TV. And there's a young internist with him in the room.
And it's your birthday.
And it's your birthday, how nice. And so we see Demi Moore from behind the hospital gown, and we see her spine, and she's fine, a little bruised. After the doctor says, and it's your birthday, whatever, and there's a bit of silence, and then you start to hear Elizabeth sobbing. She's crying. And the doctor, of course, has no idea how to comfort this woman.
Well, I gotta go.
So, take care, and he leaves. The internist stays behind. The internist, very Hollywood type guy with bright turquoise blue eyes and perfect skin and gleaming makeup on and whatever. He's obviously an actor who's, I don't know, moonlighting as a doctor. I don't know.
Mark on his hand.
Yeah, he's got this big purple birthmark looking thing on his hand, which also, if you're experienced with these things, looks like what happens when you get a lot of IV treatments inserted into the top of your hand.
Yeah.
Because it explodes your veins or whatever. So you're not sure what's going on there. Maybe it's a secret society tattoo. First, he starts to examine her, and she says, I thought I was all set. And she says, we just want to check one more thing. And he touches her spine and says, you're in really great shape. You're going to be an excellent candidate. And she's like, what? he gives her a card and says, contact us if you're interested. Oh, and it's not a card, it's a
piece of paper scribbled.
It's a piece of paper
with a phone number and the substance.
With a phone number. She calls and says, I'd like to. Well, no. Does he give her the disc drive?
She calls and says she's interested. They send her the disc drive.
That's right. Then she plays this video that basically says you have an option to be your best self and look younger. She calls and says, I'd like to order. It's all very secretive and very interesting. And we both agreed that the design and effects around the actual substance and how it's packaged.
The product.
The product and how it works is really interesting.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, perfectly done. If they were going to have the substance, it would be marketed and delivered just like this.
Yeah.
It's sort of like MREs.
Right. It really is. And literally their meals ready to eat. Elizabeth has to go. They assign her number, 503, and she has to go to this really seedy part of town, to this warehouse space. And in order to get into it, like the door, it's one of those sliding metal doors. Card. She has to use the key card, and she can't even get all the way in because it won't raise up. She has to. This seems significant. She has to crouch down to get in. She goes in. There's a locker. It has her box. She takes the box home, and I'm not going to describe all of it because it's if you hadn't seen it, and these spoilers aren't enough to make you angry at us forever.
Her yellow coat.
Oh, yes, we have to talk about the yellow coat. And every time she goes back to go to this warehouse, she's wearing this bright yellow wool coat in summer.
Yeah.
Because it's warm out.
Which is not unusual in LA. When I first moved to LA, I could not believe people in furs. I'm like, it's 70 degrees.
That's weird.
Also helps us connect her and her other self.
The color symbolist in me thinks what does this yellow mean?
Disease.
It doesn't always have to mean, it means disease. Yellow also means caution.
That's true.
Right? Stay away. I found that kind of interesting. Also, it's just this blatant statement. There was a lot of pinks and blues in the color design, and the yellow just really, really stands out. This substance is packaged. This was interesting to me too. It has very basic instructions. There's a thing that says activate. Then
use once
and throw away what's left. And then you have to maintenance or whatever to balance things for a week. And then you have to switch. And you're supposed to do all these things on a certain schedule without fail,
7 days.
For 7 days. So the way it works is when you activate, you essentially create a young, beautiful version of yourself, which emerges out of your own body. There's obviously this childbirth metaphor happening that's disturbing.
And also the science-y part of it. Again, back to the beginning, egg.
The very beginning.
Very beginning, that egg.
Right.
They inject it into an egg and a second yolk.
Oh, so that's the yellow. God, I didn't put that together. So before the Hollywood star is made, I was wrong about that. That wasn't the very beginning. The very beginning is an egg cracked open on a bright blue background, which of course makes it look like, every tampon commercial you've ever seen where they have to use blue liquid for the blood, same with diapers. You can't have yellow urine or red menstrual blood. It has to be blue liquid. It's so bizarre. So on the blue background, they have this egg and they show it dividing. So it's a clone sort of technology, perhaps. We're not really sure. We also don't know, without having DNA or whatever, how they create something that's perfect for this person. But apparently this substance is powerful enough that once you inject it into yourself, it does the work.
It just duplicates.
Yeah, it creates a young version of you that's beautiful. In this case, Margaret Qualley, who is, I'm thinking if they had decided to use maybe someone like Goldie Hawn, they'd have Margot Robbie as her young version. But they went with a brunette, which I appreciate. Margaret Qualley is of course perfect in this role.
And perky is all get out.
Perky is all get out, ridiculous. but a gorgeous woman. And the daughter of Andy McDowell, it must be said. Andy McDowell. Oh yeah, who's considered such an absolutely stunning beauty. She plays Margaret Qualley's mother in this terrific series, by the way, called Maid, which I highly recommend, which is based on a true story. So the birth occurs. It's absolutely disgusting. You basically give birth to a completely limp, dead-seeming body. So what occurs, you have this double who's your youthful self. That person lives your life for 7 days.
Who cracks out of your back.
Yeah. Oh my God, she has to sew the back up.
That whole sequence, I mean, I cannot emphasize enough how painful it was to watch that.
Yeah. And it sort of prepares you for the other really intense body horror that comes, but that is probably, in my mind, that was the most difficult to watch. So you give birth to your younger self, and then you have to sew
the old self. And then you have to do the transfer between. So it's like the blood flowing back somehow transfers the consciousness.
And how do you know how to do suturing? I don't know. You accept a lot on faith that these people know how to give an IV and they know how to inject a needle properly. It's Hollywood. They know how to do it. And of course, there's this, because you're constantly interacting with this kind of medical imagery, it's like do-it-yourself Botox, or this idea that everyone goes to some kind of a concierge provider who does things in the privacy of a special office or comes to your home or whatever. This idea that medical stuff is so secretive, and that if you've had any kind of plastic surgery or augmentation or anything done, that people shouldn't know about it. So again, this idea of her being isolated and no one knowing, and that she has to create, or her double actually creates a space in the house to hide the body that can't be seen the 7 days of the week.
Very, very sort of impromptu DIY, and you're like going, what are her neighbors saying? And then they address that issue by having a neighbor hammer on the door.
Yeah, a creepy guy that sees the young version of Elizabeth and of me starts hitting on her like a dork. What I find interesting about that, too, is the fact that, so we talk about the fact that Elizabeth Sparkle is so isolated as a 50-year-old woman, and that if she had friends, none of this would have happened. But the younger Elizabeth has people in her life. She has this creepy guy that she invites over to have sex and beer and whatever with, and then she has younger friends she goes out to bars with and whatever. Well, they're not friends, but there are people. Yeah. So the idea that she is social, partly because... apparently because she wants the sexual contact with this creepy biker guy. So the fact that she has to make the apartment so that that dead body's not just out in the open. So there's this weird sense of letting people in your life a little more when you're young, and that's kind of natural, whereas Elizabeth is completely isolated. But I also want to talk about something that I also found, there's so many things about this, the design of this film and just the way it unfolds, that I really was impressed with. One little bit that I love, the two Elizabeths, as they switch off 7 days to 7 days, they keep leaving bigger and bigger messes for the other one to clean up in the apartment. Yes. So initially there's a mess
hostility
from the younger one and the older Elizabeth has to clean up. It's like empty beer bottles and whiskey bottles and cigarette butts from these little impromptu parties she has. And there's junk food and stuff. And then Elizabeth is doing this. And Elizabeth, the older Elizabeth doesn't go out. The younger Elizabeth body calls itself Sue. I'm Sue. So Sue leaves a mess that you'd expect in like a dorm room or something. But Elizabeth, Dennis Quaid, I don't remember that guy's, his character's name, but he gives her a parting gift, and she goes and she unwraps it one day. And it's a cookbook. It's a French cookery book. And she starts doing all this fancy cooking at home because Sue comments on the fact that Elizabeth just sits around and watches TV and eats and is disgusting and fat or whatever. So Elizabeth starts to really, raise the bar on that. And you see the recipes, they show them to you like goose stuffed with foie gras, and all these disgusting animal parts or whatever that she's cooking with. And she makes a big mess. And I don't want to spoil it for you because it's quite the moment. But there is this evidence that there is this interesting sort of crossover happening between the two lives. There's two bodies, but they're only inhabiting one life. And when one body is kind of laying dormant or whatever, and they get this, like you said, meals ready to eat, they get this plastic tubing of food that keeps them alive while they're laying on the floor in the dark. But then, of course, as one could have predicted, Sue doesn't want to go back and be old Elizabeth, so she breaks the cycle that she's meant, the regimen she's meant to follow, and she tries to get some extra time in the youthful body.
First a little bit.
First just a little. That little bit has horrible consequences. And this is one of the most interesting visuals, I think, of the film.
The first time she overstays her welcome, it's one finger. But the finger has become like this, very much recognizably fairy tale witch finger, all wrinkled and almost green and with a long pointy nail. And it's sort of like, it's just horrifying because, of course, her hand is so visible. And she can't stop staring at it.
And it's the right pointer finger, so not like one you're not going to use. Elizabeth then calls up the substance company and says, this happened, and they're like, you can't undo that. If you steal time from one side, it's like conceptually this idea of stealing time, and you can't go back and you can't reverse it. So she has this hag-like finger, which cannot be undone. And then that moment happens that you mentioned.
Oh yeah, which is nice because she's coming out of the hospital. She runs into someone she knew in high school.
10th grade.
Yeah. Oh, 10th grade.
Named Fred.
Yeah. And he's like, oh my God, you're still the most beautiful woman in the world. And she's like, oh, I think feeling very vulnerable at that moment. She says, well, give me your number and, maybe we can do something. And he's like, oh, no, I know it'll never happen.
You can tell she's not interested. And the phone number falls into the mud or something. But for some reason, she picks it up. And then, some time goes by and this thing occurs where she has the hag-like finger and she's feeling some regret about what she's in the middle of and knowing she can't undo it. And it feels very real, even though this technology is very much not available. She's still a real person going through these real feelings. And in her despair, she goes into her closet and she takes out all these old pocketbooks and she starts dumping them on the floor. And it's this great visual because it's all these little bits of things, tickets and lipstick and gum and it's just stuff, that's in your purse when you switch purses. And she finds that mud-covered phone number and she calls Fred. And Fred cannot believe, he cannot believe she called. And she says, well, maybe we could have a drink. So he says, I'm going to book a table at Luigi's for 8:00. She says, great, I'll meet you there. And it is this stunning sequence that occurs where she's getting ready to go out and she's wearing this little red tardy looking dress that just looks terrible on her, but she's all sexy and she's putting her makeup on and doing her hair and she actually looks really good. And she's going to wear long black gloves to cover up the hag-like finger. And
she steps out into the living room and she sees the billboard.
Through the window, she sees the big billboard of her younger self. And she starts feeling insecure and insufficient. And she starts playing with her makeup a little more. And she's still not happy. And she starts pushing up her bra. And then she finally gets so frustrated with not looking perfect. Oh, this is Demi Moore, who looks amazing, by the way.
But not looking young.
The way not looking as young as she wants to, or as young as she would be on the other 7 days or whatever. And she doesn't go. And there's text messages from Fred saying, where are you? Oh, I know you Hollywood stars like to make an entrance. Maybe that's why you're late. And this moment of connection that she seemed genuinely excited about and probably would have been the perfect thing for her to connect with a normal person at this stage of the game who might have been able to help her or at least make her feel some emotional connection to a human being in the midst of it all.
But
that's
the chance
so
is
sad.
lost.
Oh, gosh,
it's really a heartbreaking moment in the film, and you feel some sympathy for this woman. That there's a lot of things that make you feel sympathetic, I suppose, if you're an older woman, that you see a lot of the things. But I think that's a moment that makes you feel that there's someone there, and there's someone who might have, in better circumstances, made more of themselves and had a better life, and not given into a moment like this, but. It's that need to look young and that desire to sort of hold on to something that, instead of just naturally aging as we do, it's part of life.
But also, I mean, being told that that's all she was valuable as. It wasn't just that's how she felt about herself.
That's why you need more people around you
exactly
to validate
that guy's
an asshole, don't listen to him.
Yeah. And maybe women friends and male friends that would validate her as a person. And all of them are also aging. I mean, it's not like every single person in Hollywood is trying to stay, forever youthful looking. So I think, though, that it's relatable, even though there's this science fiction fantasy aspect of it. I think it's relatable because I don't like that word relatable, but it's something that older women can identify with, because even if we are self-actualized and even if we are letting ourselves age gracefully and even if we are still chasing after dreams, we have accomplishments and we have relationships and we have all these things in our autumn years, it's still not good enough, and you're still judged for being a childless cat lady, for having gray hair or blue hair or like whatever color hair. You cannot win with your hair color, let's face it.
That's right.
So it's very, very difficult to feel like it's like damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't speak up about something, you're being too submissive and too weak. If you do speak up, you're a mouthy bitch.
Harpy and a shrew.
Yeah, or a harpy and a shrew. So you really can't win. And so the best thing to do is, to some extent, surround yourself with people who get you, who accept you. And you can then accept them, and then we can all accept each other together and maybe work towards something that's worthwhile instead of just judging everyone based on superficial bullshit. But then, I don't rule the world,
so far.
Not yet. So things progress, let us say. And this thing that starts with the hag-like finger that appears on Elizabeth's body other things start happening because the Sue character still is not willing to let go of that time she has in the youthful form.
And her success is growing.
And she's been asked to host this huge, like, New Year's Eve program. She goes from having a morning aerobics show, which gets so many big fans that they're then going to ask her to do this big primetime thing, which is very exciting for her. This is never about money. We don't hear anything about how much money she's making. It's purely about her becoming famous as this incredibly empty, shallow personality who all she does is smile for the camera
and show off her body.
And can we just say how many camera close-ups of her crotch and her ass?
But it was really interesting to have a woman director. You never felt like it never felt creepy and salacious.
No, it was meant to be horrifying. I think
it really. Oh yeah.
It wasn't really male gaze at all. It was like female gaze at the horror. I think.
And it was very much trying to show how we idealize this as a kind of power. That having that hard body, having that flawlessness, and I mean,
no superfluous body hair whatsoever.
None. Yeah, yes. At her birth, she already has shaved pits.
I know, and shaved pubic hair. There was a really quick shot where you see that it's like, wow, how does this happen? No, I agree with you. And thank goodness this was directed by a female director. This material, I can't imagine. Well, we don't know, but
it would have been creepy in male hands.
Yeah. Well, it was creepy enough,
and it would all
but for
be
different reasons.
It would be all about the Dennis Quaid character.
Yes, right, exactly. No, I think that those close-ups of the bodies, these glistening, perfect. There's no cellulite. There's no wrinkles.
Yeah, it's slipping into the uncanny valley.
Exactly. Yeah. This idea that people think that you can have everything made of plastic and everything smoothed out and wrinkle-free and whatnot, and it is kind of appalling. I did want to mention too, for people who haven't seen it, Demi Moore hasn't done a lot of films in recent years, and she just did a great role in, believe it or not, a Ryan Murphy series, Truman Capote versus the Swans. This is based on a book that was written about Truman Capote's relationships with these older women in his orbit, these society matrons. And Demi Moore plays a really fascinating character in this, and she's terrific in this role. And I just have to say, one of the reasons I think I was able to love this so much, and why I loved the Jeffrey Dahmer series that Ryan Murphy produced, is that Ryan Murphy didn't write either one of these. He did no writing. And I'm not saying Ryan Murphy's a bad writer, but he just really doesn't know when to stop. And so the Jeffrey Dahmer series was incredibly well done. And this series is beautifully done as well. And there are all these older actresses known for their great beauty who play these older women. And some of whom you think, like Chloe Sevigny, she's not really older, but she plays this older woman. And Diane Lane, Naomi Watts, and of course, Demi Moore. And it's Tom Hollander is incredible as Truman Capote. But I just want to say that Demi Moore, now having reached this stage in her career where she's still this slender, starlet-looking woman, but of course, at her age, can't be expected to necessarily play that age. But we also have the ubiquitous Nicole Kidman, who will not stop being in movies. And I'm sorry, I love her. She's great. But now she's starting to play this sort of character where she's this older woman who is still this temptress, but for younger men kind of thing. And, I love that. I celebrate that. I think it's great. I think we should see more films where we have older women as sex symbols.
Repeating the same role.
But yeah,
over and
like she's still,
sticking to that.
She wouldn't attract these younger men if she wasn't perfectly, sexy, slender, no wrinkles, and in full makeup and all of that. Yeah. So the idea that you could have an older woman who's just kind of normal looking for her age with a younger man, we certainly have not seen that, and I don't know that we will see that. We did see it in Triangle of Sadness, where Dolly DeLeon manages to bed Harris Dickinson, who also plays the love interest in this new Nicole Kidman movie called Baby Girl. But she has to do it kind of at gunpoint. Like, she's like, Dolly DeLeon is kind of in charge. I don't know if you've seen Triangle of Sadness? It's great. Also, I want to say there's a French version of this Baby Girl scenario that came out earlier this year.
This is one of these remakes they immediately remake.
It's not a remake, but there's it's a very similar story where this older, successful woman has an affair with a much younger man, and he kind of turns the tables a bit. It's a power dynamic thing. It's a great French film. I think it's called Last Summer. Very well done, by the way. Highly recommend. Can't recommend Baby Girl because I haven't seen it, but I feel like I have because I saw the trailer, and trailers leave nothing to the imagination anymore.
Sadly.
Yeah, I know. So
anyway. That's why I'm so glad that I had just the basics of body horror, aging woman, and something to do with younger version of herself. Yeah. And that's all I knew going into this. So.
I didn't watch a trailer, and I rarely do watch trailers because honestly, they really do tend to give a little too much away. Yeah. And I was hearing enough about this and knowing that this was something that would interest me. So I'm glad we got to see it on the big screen.
And I have to say, the day before, I think Peter Strickland on Twitter was like, this was amazing. And especially since he's so obsessed about sound, I thought, gotta go see that.
Oh, well, this is a guy whose treatment of body horror in film is also very beautifully done, much more nuanced.
Flux Gourmet.
I love Flux Gourmet. Holy cow.
I have to find some excuse to get lots of people to see it so I can talk about it with more people.
We should talk about it on the podcast at some point. I really loved that, and I'd love to have seen it on the big screen because I feel like I didn't get quite the experience I would have because I had to watch it on my tiny laptop. But I did think it was very beautiful. In Fabric, which is another.
That's another one. That's a beautiful.
Anyway, we're off topic. We always do this. This is me. Welcome to the Kate and Peg Show, where we get distracted about other things. So, Kate, bring us back to the substance.
So Sue is overstaying her welcome more and more, and she's with the New Year's Eve program coming up. She really, really, really overstays her welcome, and in fact. There's trouble. She just wants it to end. She wants it to stop. But
she has to do this show before she can switch things over.
And she's going to have to switch one more time because otherwise...
Because it ran out. The substance ran out and she needed one last little hit.
Both of them are calling the organization and both of them are being told, you can't. It's termination or nothing.
Right.
So Elizabeth decides, well, at this point... I've been turned into this terrible hag. I'm finally going to terminate.
You know, what's interesting, too, is half her face. Like, half of it still looks like a normal 50-year-old woman, but the other half is very, very wrinkled. And then her hair turns all gray and, like, just raggedy. And half of her body is still a little bit youthful. It's like a chimera thing.
Sound again. The horrible noise of her knees.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my God.
Oh.
That was awful.
Oh, she's sitting in a chair and she can't quite stand up and she can't bend her knee. And my goodness. That was brutal.
That was painful.
Holy cow.
But she decides she's going to terminate and she just can't quite do it.
So she gets this blue taffeta dress that's just straight out of a Disney princess, cartoon basically that she's going to wear for this midnight, New Year's Eve at midnight unveil of her, this being this new it girl, I suppose. Things go wrong.
Things go disastrously wrong because she decides, I know what, we'll just start over. Because
she
did not discard the used ones.
She did not do as told. She did not read the instructions fully, and she did not discard the Activate serum. And so she tries to do this again
from herself. Oh, we've passed over all of the extra long time sucking out substance from the old self.
Oh yeah.
And the point of entry increasingly diseased.
Oh my gosh!
Oh my god! Oh my god! The last one. Oh.
I got to say, I know I said the car crash was the worst for me, but that was the worst. The continuing insertion of the needle into the festering, pus-filled, decaying injection site. But this is the thing. The thing about body horror that can be really intriguing to talk about is that it kind of goes towards your own thing you're uncomfortable with. Some people don't like spiders. Some people don't like blood. Some people don't like wounds.
Some people don't like needles, and they will have trouble with this.
I've had a needle phobia since I was a kid because I had to get a minor surgery when I was 7 years old. And in those days, the needles they used to take blood were huge, and they would wake me up at 3 a.m. with these huge things. And I've just always had, even though needles are tiny now. So the needle thing is a big thing, but also just different, people respond to different kinds of things. Like some people can't see any kind of dead body. Some people can't see a decaying body. Some people don't like to see shattered bones, whatever. This film shows you all of it. Literally no spiders.
You hear it.
The sound design, as Kate has said, it's brilliantly done. I really hope at least that wins some kind of an award this year. There's always this teasing suggestion that, finally some great actress will win for a horror film, like Toni Collette should have won for Hereditary more recently. And, it probably won't happen, unfortunately, because horror as a genre is still not very well respected. But I hesitate to even call this a genre film, even though it's a very specific type of horror genre. It kind of goes beyond that because I think its cultural impact and metaphorical, the symbolism and the themes that they're so easily relatable to anyone who sees it, I think, should I think make a bigger splash than because let's face it, your average horror film these days doesn't necessarily have a very strong storyline or isn't fully fleshed out. And
a lot of jump scares.
This is beautifully realized from start to finish. Yeah, I have to say.
Yeah. It's clearly got vision and everything supports it. It's a huge tonal shift in this movie, which absolutely delighted me. I mean, the music cue of Vertigo, it comes at a moment where it's just a sublime, hilarious, horrific, terrible, and it's part of where that tonal shift begins to happen. And it's just absolute joyful mayhem after that.
And all you can really do is sit there and scream and almost laugh at how absurd.
I was absolutely laughing.
I was. It was funny, but also horrifying.
Yes.
And I honestly did feel that way. Like the end of Carrie is similar, although that was way ahead of its time, obviously. And I do think the end of the Suspiria remake, where there is tons of blood and exploding bodies and stuff, you're just like, whoa, what the fuck is happening? Because the original Suspiria, of course, it has its gross moments, but the special effects are nowhere near, what they're at now.
I resisted the remake for so long, and I'm glad I finally got to it. Modern dance just fascinates me endlessly, and I thought they used it so beautifully because in the original Suspiria, despite it being about a dancing school, there's almost no dancing in it.
I know, yeah.
There's lots of dance in the remake, and I just love it. And it has that, let's go for the spectacle, and let's show how that is all part of this audience licking their lips, ready for their salacious show.
And there's this moment where, in the midst of the horrible things happening, one white woman stands up in the audience and starts screaming. Right?
Yes. So it's so ironically done. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great tropey moment, but it's also sort of like, no one is horrified by everything that has led to this moment. But now that they're being sprayed with blood everywhere from this
what is it?
Homunculus on stage. Monsterolizasu. This creation that came from this technology.
Never use the activation twice.
No. It's this monstrous, like, lumpen throwback crazy thing in a blue taffeta dress.
Yeah. And the face of Demi Moore.
Yes.
It's like there's not a woman alive who has not pasted an acceptable face on her monster body.
Yeah, I mean, you have to. To get through the world.
It's very funny, but it's also very touching, but it's also very horrifying. I mean, this monstrous body that is just all of these different things, like it couldn't decide which new self to make.
Well, so when Monster Elizabeth Sue or whatever, this new creation, still understands that she has to get to the studio to do the New Year's Eve show. And she can't leave because things don't look right. So she smashes the glass in the huge portrait of herself, and then she cuts it out and puts it on her face, and then she feels happy, like, oh, that's me. And when she gets to the studio,
with the eye still missing.
Yes, the eye's gone. She gets to the studio, and I think she puts some lipstick on it as well.
Yes.
She gets to the studio, and she has to go in this back door, and she gets to the back door, and there's a guy, with a clipboard, and it's kind of dark and dim, and he just kind of shines the light briefly, and all he sees is the blue taffeta dress, because they'd seen her earlier
face.
And she left, and she comes back and he sees that cutout face and he thinks it's her, and she's like, oh, we've been looking for you, come on in, you're on in 5 minutes.
And the idea that so this he doesn't see her body, they don't
he
see her.
He just sees that two-dimensional face. He does not see who this human being is in the flesh, and there's a lot of flesh there.
A lot of very weird flesh.
Lumpen flesh and weird breasts, and I love in the credits that there's a whole team of people that made the breast prosthetics because wow, oh gosh. Well, what more can we say? I think there's
all kinds of very smart movie nods. I mean, we mentioned Vertigo and Carrie, but there's lots of moments you're like going, wait a minute, I'm feeling a chime of remembrance.
And I definitely felt that the Suspiria remake in there. There's some other films that deal with this kind of aging actress kind of trope. I think we do see a little bit of whatever happened to Baby Jane, maybe a little bit. Like The Player, that Robert Altman film, that kind of thing.
It's very much, I mean, apart from the fact that she keeps walking, it very much captures the LA vibe. But having lived in LA, nobody walks in LA.
Right.
Missing persons there, but only a nobody walks in LA. I could maybe see that as kind of an ironic moment of that she has become a nobody because she has to walk. But I think that's reaching. I think that's definitely reaching.
Kind of neighborhood. But also, but it also exacerbates her isolation, because at least if she was driving, she'd be in traffic with other people when she's walking.
She had somebody drive her.
But why doesn't she have a driver?
Yeah,
she's a wealthy person. She has a cleaning lady,
which she gets rid of because, of course, now she has to hide her life, and that's part of why the mess gets so out of hand too. But also the entrance to the locker space when she's old and in pain and has to still
go under that door.
It's just that whole.
I saw that coming. Every time she went back, I thought, at some point she's not going to be able to get under there,
or not be able to get back up if she does.
Right. So
the coffee shop, which again sort of fits into that whole sort of
and there was
uncanny,
only older people living,
and there is
sitting there, older women alone, and that one old man, and we find out who that old man is.
And we recognize the
with the blue eyes.
In his hand. Yeah,
so interesting.
But it's again that every opportunity to form community is just ignored, wasted. She walks away from it.
Yeah.
Every time she has an opening, the one time she almost
she could have befriended that guy who sucked her into the whole thing to begin with.
Yeah.
But he's lost in despair too.
Yeah, it's the rage of age against youth, as we see in the film, is nothing compared to the rage of youth against age. A lot of young people are just kind of like, ew, old people are gross. Well, but she hates that she has to become Elizabeth. Sue hates Elizabeth.
Yeah. She finds her disgusting. It made me think of, there's that line in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof where Maggie says, you either have to be young or with money, because you can't be old without it.
Yeah.
And this, I found myself thinking about that quite a bit in connection to this film, because here we have this very wealthy person. We have no idea how much the substance costs, but I'm assuming it costs, a fair amount of money.
She never even asked.
No, she never asked.
If you don't ask the price,
pays for it. Then it's free to those who can afford it, very expensive to those who can't, or whatever. With Nell and I.
And the apartment clearly very expensive. No. Everything
the
about
clothes,
her life,
the shoes,
clothes,
everything.
Oh yeah, all the stuff.
But this is the thing is that, and then she enters the coffee shop where we immediately see two older women sitting alone, and then the older man sitting at the counter, and the older man who she has the connection with. It just made me think about, and not to go off on a political tangent here, but I think that many of us, especially us people who are now a bit older, have to think about the fact that the social services in our nation are woefully inadequate for an aging population. Yes. Our healthcare system has broken down, partly because the pandemic just exhausted it, and the pandemic is still exhausting it. And we have a political party that doesn't care about anyone and doesn't care if people have roofs over their head or food in their bellies or, places to sleep at night. So there is a great deal of anxiety and fear and trepidation going towards the future, not just because we're aging into an uncertain future in the midst of everything else. Yeah. The fact that the only thing that we often feel some measure of control about, which is our own bodies, that they can become foreign to us and they can become
or illegal.
Or illegal. Well, there's that. That's the other thing. And I think that women, of course, are going to respond to this film very differently than men, perhaps. I would hope. One election does not a future make, and we're going to have to keep struggling against these social and political forces. Yeah. No, I think that's a good note to end on, that we cannot despair, we cannot just doom scroll our way out of this, that we have to make that connection, and if we remain isolated, we're not going to be able to pull together to fight back. So rage against the machine and rage against the dying of the light, I guess, and form your community. Well, Kate, this has been a scintillating conversation as always. And of course, I feel like we've barely cracked the tip of the iceberg.
Well, I just hope we persuade some more people to go see it.
It's so good. And you know what? You can forget every spoiler that you heard, because you will. Because the minute the crazy stuff starts happening, it's all going to go out the window, and you're not going to know what comes next.
You're going to be in the moment, it's going, absolutely, oh my God, oh, no.
It is insane. So yes, go see The Substance. Highly recommend. Go see, stream Truman Capote versus the Swans, which is another great role that Demi Moore is in. And see She Will with Alice Krige, another woman-directed film about an aging actress, which is fantastic. Came out about a year ago. 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thanks very much for tuning in. Hopefully you're having a great autumn out there and
eating apples
and choosing pumpkins and getting yourself some cider donuts if you have them available in your neck of the woods. Thanks again for coming, Kate.
Thanks for inviting me.
And stay tuned for the next episode of The Witching Hour is Nigh. Dun, dun, dun.